This is Mona's domain in 2.8's Golden Apple Archipelago event. Well, from out of bounds and far above. Definitely among the largest domains in the game. We've got a number of these to cover, from this to Kazuha's Distorted Dojo, Xinyan's almost Halloween-themed domain, and can't forget about the epic castles and Fischl's. We may as well go in order, starting with Kazuha's. Out of bounds, there's a bunch of swirling debris. We can see the lighting effects they use to give certain areas a glow from up here, but in terms of places in the background to reach and explore, there isn't much. The distant islands with trees and shrines are behind teleport barriers and cannot be reached. However, that's not to say this place doesn't have anything peculiar. Let's talk about the switches. These things close the room you're in and take you elsewhere in the domain, right? Not quite. Your character never moves, nor does the room you're in. Instead, parts of the domain unload, and other parts load in to take their place. The biggest example of this is the first room of the first domain. We have the room we begin in with the switch, and the utility room with the note from Kazuha's father. And that's it. The domain doesn't exist until you hit the switch. At first, it's these two rooms with remnants of other rooms. Some objects in the game appear to never unload, no matter how far away the player is. Which objects those are, or even the consistency of that between objects of the same type in different areas, tends to vary greatly. But here, we have the device that shoots the colored energy, door frames, and most importantly, the switches. So let's hit the second switch first and see what happens, shall we? That wasn't a door frame, but the very edges of the doors themselves. Odd. They're loading in from nothingness, just like the entirety of the domain does. Really cool. What's also cool is this domain features Kazuha's father, except we can only see him as a shadow projected on the wall. That said, there are character models behind this wall, and by adjusting the camera, a glimpse at his father can be taken. Unfortunately, the guy got a regular old NPC model. Still, neat to be able to see something that the player isn't intended to see. Xinyan's domain is, thematically, my favorite of the four. It's got this Halloweenish vibe to it. The various mountains can be climbed, although some are surrounded by invisible walls. The giant manor can be reached by gliding over to it. The ceiling itself has no collision, but the stony trim atop it does. The building also has no back. Might think it's possible to get into it from the side, but at this point in the game's life, it's obvious the devs really enjoy slapping invisible walls over just about everything, so can't get in there. By scaling the mountain across the water, one of the highest points in the domain is reached. It doesn't look like there's anything of interest around, does it? Let's change that. Gliding out over the water, all the way to its very edge, makes the hazy effect unload. And if we swim to a very specific spot in the water, see that? In the sky back there? Two suns and a swirling cloud effect. That's got to be this area that's through the other door back near the flowers. A quick aside, but for any item collectors out there, you can keep the reverberating key and still get all the chests in here. All one needs to do is cross this gap without the bridge, which a geo-traveler can do with ease. This is the locked door, but it's only locked from the other side. Unsure if this key will get deleted after the event ends, but it currently doesn't have an expiration icon. Never mind about any of that, because they patched it. It's a shame we couldn't walk around Xinyan's house. We'll get to why once we're in Mona's domain. But first...
Incoming!
This one is a what you see is what you get kind of domain. Want to climb to the top of the castle? Go ahead. Unfortunately, there won't be a Yoshi waiting for you up top to congratulate you and grant you magical jumping powers. But hey, it's a neat view. The towers on the islands in the background are all fake and cannot be reached. I got excited when I saw trees load in on this large island here, but teleport barrier. There's a big invisible ceiling over the inner portion of the castle, and it's funny to watch a character slide from one side to the other. Overall, Fischl's is great in that climbing the towers and such will let you bypass a few of the puzzles while still progressing the quest, but beyond that, at least from what I could find, there's nothing more to them. That's not to say climbing the castle isn't fun. It's very fun. Definitely go do it. You know, if that sit command teleport glitch still existed, zipping around this domain with it would be an absolute blast, because there's no shortage of places to sit. That brings us back to the largest and most complex of all the domains, Mona's. Also, back to the point regarding Xinyan's house and how we cannot explore it. That's because Mona's house is floating far above the domain, similar to the mirror library in Enkanomiya. What about Fischl's house? I have a reason to believe that's below the map, which is a new design trick for Genshin that Mona's domain seems to use as well. Largest is no exaggeration. Mona's domain is ridiculously huge. It may even be the biggest in the game. Keep in mind that this view is from very far away. In the bottom left, near this foggy circle, is the room with the 5 torches, part of the whole reflections puzzle section. The outside of this place, overshadowed by a mountain, is a giant half ring. There are a few of them as one descends further towards the intended play area. In the top left, where the terrain jets out diagonally, is the room with those starry bridges and corkscrew hallway. The ceiling is a V-shape. Oh man, look at this warped perspective, these weird angles. Would be awesome to have a whole maze in this fashion. Below the water of those starry bridge rooms is a whole bunch of columns. It's really neat, and I can just picture some sort of platforming challenge in a place like this. Maybe one day they'll get that daring with their design. The center is, well, the center. Surprising, eh? The wires holding up the various decor reach above the ceiling. The disc in the bottom right, and the adjacent room, are the areas where the water level can be adjusted via that platform. Invisible ceilings seal off both areas, but we can drop down below the light effects. I had thought that astral sphere over on the right is the area you drop into during those Mona-only sequences, but it turns out that isn't the case. It's just used as a backdrop to this room that has an invisible wall. From up close, can see where the background texture begins and ends. Can also glide through it, though there's nothing on the other side. As for the various towers all around, some of them are fake. It can be a bit confusing, but the majority of things that look like walkable surfaces are indeed walkable surfaces. Okay, one more interesting thing to cover here. You may have noticed I didn't point out where all those interesting Mona-only sequences are. The reason being, they're not in the main area of the domain. Panning the camera down, way down, a large platform can be seen. The platform is that contrasting color. Attempting to jump down there eventually smacks the character into a teleport barrier. The area can be revisited by diving into one of those pools of water, or by going through Mona's house again. We know there's a teleport barrier between here and the bulk of the domain, but just how much farther down can one go from here? Not one bit. This piece of land is mere pixels above the map's void out zone. I assume that this platform is where all those special Mona-only sequences take place, and that the area has a bunch of load, unload flags to spawn in the necessary content depending on where the player is within the story. Because upon voiding out, the two things that were loaded in down here, the challenge totem and the starry field puzzle, are gone when the character respawns. To illustrate those flags, I sequence broke the final Mona-only section. So the domain we walked through is still loaded in, but once we reach the intended goal, it vanishes. With that, our tour has reached its end. I'm going to let this gliding sequence play out, but first just want to say that these domains were really something else. The devs crafted an experience unlike any other in the game until now. Let's hope this trend continues, and that they give us stuff like this as permanent content too. Can't believe the hard work of all these developers will be gone forever in a few weeks from this video's publication. Crazy. This is Moosashi, signing off. Enjoy the glide, and till next time.